Besides, it would be over quickly. The galaxy watched. They expected a massacre. They had no idea what they were about to see. The first Koroth ships entered the atmosphere of New Busan like falling stars, their hulls glowing red with heat. Commander Chomira watched them from the command center, counting each one as it descended. 30 ships, 15,000 warriors. Against her 800, all units hold positions, she said into her communicator. Do not fire until they land. Let them think we are afraid. Around her, soldiers checked their weapons and said quiet prayers. Many of them were young, barely out of training. They had never seen real combat. They had never seen a Koroth. The enemy ships landed in the fields outside the colony's walls. Hatches opened, and the warriors poured out like a gray tide. They were enormous, each one standing over 2 meters tall, with 4 arms ending in claws that could tear through metal. Their skin was thick as armor. Their eyes burned with hunger for battle. Warlord Keth stepped forward and raised his voice so that it echoed across the field. Humans, you have one chance to surrender. Lay down your weapons, and we will make your deaths quick. Resist, and we will make them slow. Chomira pressed the button on her communicator. Her voice rang out from speakers along the colony walls. And my name is Commander Cho, Mira of the United Earth Defense Force. You are in violation of galactic law by entering human territory. Leave now, or we will remove you. Keth laughed. His warriors laughed with him, the sound rolling across the field like thunder. Remove us? Keth said. With what army, little creature? Mira smiled, though no one could see it. With this one. The first volley came from positions the Koroth had not detected. Snipers hidden in the hills, mines buried in the grass. Explosives planted in the landing zone. 50 Koroth died before they understood what was happening, but 50 was nothing. Keth roared with rage and ordered the charge. What followed was not a battle. It was a nightmare. The Koroth reached the walls within minutes, their massive bodies absorbing bullets that would kill any human. They tore through the first gate with their bare hands and poured into the colony streets. The fighting became close, brutal, and desperate, and that was when the galaxy learned what humans truly were. A Koroth warrior cornered a young ensign named Li Day in an alley. The warrior was twice his size and had already killed 3 soldiers. He expected the human to run or beg. Instead, Li Day picked up a broken piece of pipe and attacked. The warrior blocked the first strike easily, the second, the third. But Li Day did not stop. He kept swinging, kept moving, kept fighting. When the pipe broke, he used his fists. When his fists bled, he used his teeth. The warrior, confused by this tiny creature that would not stop, hesitated for just a moment. That moment was enough. Li Day drove a knife into the gap between the warrior's neck plates, and the giant fell. This scene repeated across the colony. Humans who should have died kept fighting. Soldiers with broken bones stood up and fired their weapons. Civilians who had never held a gun threw rocks, bottles, and furniture at the invaders. A group of farmers trapped a Koroth squad in a barn and set it on fire. Hours passed. The Koroth had expected to capture the colony in 2 hours. After 12 hours, they had advanced only 3 blocks. What is wrong with these creatures? One of Keth's officers asked, fear creeping into his voice. They should be dead. They should have surrendered. Keth did not answer. He was watching a human soldier fight for warriors at once. The soldier was bleeding from a dozen wounds, one arm hanging useless at his side. But he was still standing, still fighting, still smiling. The Koroth did not understand. They could not understand. Humans did not fight to win. They fought because fighting was all they knew how to do. By the 30th hour, the Koroth had lost 3,000 warriors. The humans had lost 100. Keth ordered his forces to regroup and rest, thinking the humans would do the same. They did not. Chomira had divided her soldiers into 3 groups. While the Koroth slept, the first group attacked their supply lines. The second group rescued wounded humans from the battlefield. The third group simply kept fighting, hitting the enemy positions with small strikes that never stopped. Sleep, Mira told her exhausted soldiers. Sleep in shifts. 4 hours each, then back to the line. Commander, one of her officers said, the Koroth are not sleeping in shifts. They are sleeping all together. Mira nodded. That is their mistake. By the 50th hour, the Koroth were breaking. They were warriors who had conquered 100 worlds, but they had never faced an enemy like this. Humans did not fight like soldiers. They fought like animals, like demons, like something from the old stories that Koroth mothers told to frighten their children. Warlord Keth decided to end it himself. He challenged any human commander to single combat. Believing that killing their leader would break their spirit, Cho Myra accepted. They met in the central plaza of the colony, surrounded by the bodies of the fallen. Keth towered over her, his forearms flexing with muscle, his claws gleaming in the firelight. You are brave, he admitted. But bravery is not enough. Mira said nothing. She raised her sword, a simple blade of earth steel, and waited. The duel lasted 3 hours. Keth was stronger. Keth was faster. Keth had forearms and centuries of training. But Mira did not stop. Every time he knocked her down, she stood up. Every time he cut her, she kept fighting. Every time he thought she was finished, she attacked again. And slowly, something impossible happened. Keth grew tired. His arms became heavy. His strikes became slow. He had never fought for so long in his life. His body was not built for this, but hers was. In the final moment, Keth fell to his knees, gasping for breath. Myra stood over him, bleeding from wounds that should have killed her twice over. You, ... Keth whispered. What are you? Mira picked up his own blade, the weapon he had used to kill hundreds of enemies across the galaxy. We are human, she said, and we do not stop. She brought the blade down. When the sun rose over New Busan, the Koroth fleet retreated. They had arrived with 15,000 warriors. They left with 4,000. The humans had lost 200. The footage spread across the galaxy within hours. Every species watched in silence as humans fought and bled and refused to die. In the Galactic Council, High Speaker Volus called an emergency session for the first time in 300 years. Ambassador Ren did not attend. He locked himself in his quarters and watched the battle recordings again and again. Trying to understand, he never did. The galaxy had not known fear for 1,000 years. The great wars were over. The council kept peace. Species knew their place in the order of things. From the mighty Koroth at the top to the simple humans at the bottom. But after New Busan, everything changed. On 100 worlds, leaders watched the battle footage and asked the same question. How? How did 800 farmers and soldiers defeat 15,000 Koroth warriors? It was impossible. It broke every rule of war. It should not have happened, and yet it did. High Speaker Volus sat in his private chambers and studied the recordings frame by frame. He was 4,000 years old, one of the oldest beings in the galaxy. He had seen empires rise and fall. He had watched species evolve and die. Nothing surprised him anymore until now. Look at this, he said to his advisor, pointing at the screen. A human soldier was fighting with a knife against a Koroth warrior 3 times his size. The human was wounded, bleeding, clearly dying. But his face showed no fear. Only determination. Only rage. The human should have collapsed hours before this moment, Volus said quietly. His wounds alone should have killed him. But he kept fighting. Why? His advisor, an ancient Ethrin named Solus, shook her head. We do not know, High Speaker. Our scientists are studying it now. There is a chemical in human blood called adrenaline. It appears to give them temporary strength beyond their normal limits. Temporary strength is not enough to explain this. No, Solus agreed. It is not. There is something else. Something we did not see before because we were not looking. Volus turned off the screen and stood by his window, looking out at the endless stars. We have made a mistake, he said. A very old and very dangerous mistake. On Earth, the news of New Busan spread like wildfire. For the first time in 50 years, humans celebrated a victory against an alien species. Parades filled the streets. Songs were written about Commander Cho, Mira, and Ensign Lee Day. Children played games where they pretended to be human soldiers fighting Koroth invaders. But in the quiet rooms where leaders gathered, the celebration was mixed with something else: understanding. Humanity was beginning to see itself through new eyes. Park June, the scientist from the research station, finally published his report. He had expected no one to read it. Instead, it became the most downloaded document in human history. "Humans are not weak," he wrote. "We are not strong either. We are something else entirely. We are persistence predators." He explained what this meant. Millions of years ago, on the plains of ancient Earth, humans hunted by chasing animals until the animals died from exhaustion. Humans could not run faster than deer or antelope, but they could run longer. They could track prey for days, never stopping, never resting, until the animals simply gave up and collapsed. The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was older than most civilizations. Its walls stretched toward a ceiling that looked like the night sky itself, filled with floating lights from 100 different worlds. Thousands of delegates sat in curved rows, their bodies shaped by evolution on planets humans had never seen. Some had scales, some had wings, some were made of pure light, and in the lowest section, in seats meant for those who did not matter, sat the humans. Kong Tae stood at the speaking platform and looked up at the faces watching him. He was 53 years old, with gray hair and tired eyes, but his voice was steady. He had spent 30 years as a diplomat, and he had learned that the galaxy did not respect humanity. Not yet. "Hi, Speaker Volus," he said, bowing his head slightly toward the tall, silver-skinned figure at the center of the inner circle. "I come before this council to request that humanity be granted advanced species status. We have been members of this body for 50 years. We have followed every law. We have paid every taxes. We have asked for nothing. Today, I ask for recognition." The hall was silent for a moment. Then Ambassador Ren laughed. Ren was Korath, a species of warriors who had conquered half the galaxy before the council forced them to stop. He was massive, with 4 arms and skin like gray stone. His people respected only strength, and they saw none in humanity. "Recognition?" Ren said, his voice booming through the chamber. "For what? Your species lives barely 100 years. Your bodies break from wounds that would not slow a Korath child. You have no psychic abilities, no natural weapons, no regeneration. You are Tier 7, human, the lowest rank. You exist because we allow it." Kong Tae felt anger rise in his chest, but he pushed it down. He had heard these words before. Every human diplomat had. "We have grown," he said calmly. "Our technology has improved. Our colonies now number 47 worlds. We contribute to galactic trade, science, and culture. We deserve a voice in the decisions that affect us." High Speaker Volus raised one slender hand, and Ren fell silent. The Etherians were the oldest species in the council, and even the Korath respected them. Volus looked at Kong Tae with eyes that held no emotion, only ancient patience. Diplomat Kong Volus said, "The council does not measure worth by numbers alone. Advanced species possess qualities that define survival in this galaxy. The Selthi control gravity with their minds. The Korath heal from mortal wounds in ours. The Etherians live for thousands of years and see across dimensions. What do humans possess?" Kong Tae opened his mouth to answer, but no words came. He thought of Earth, of the billions of people who worked and dreamed and loved. He thought of the soldiers who protected the colonies, scientists who pushed the boundaries of knowledge, the artists who created beauty from nothing. But how could he explain any of that to beings who measured strength only in power? "We possess determination," he finally said. "We do not give up." The hall erupted in laughter. Even Volus allowed a small smile to cross his silver face. "Determination," Ren repeated, shaking his massive head. A child's answer. "Return to your seat, human. Your petition is denied." Kangtae walked back to the human section with his head held high, but inside, he felt the weight of failure. Beside him, his assistant, a young woman named Yoon Hannah, watched with sharp eyes. She was not a diplomat. She was a soldier, attending the council as part of her training to become an admiral, and she had heard enough. "They will never give us respect," she whispered to Kangtae. "We will have to take it." Far from the council chambers, on a research station orbiting a dead moon, a scientist named Park Jun stared at his computer screen with wide eyes. He had been studying alien biology for 15 years, comparing the physical traits of every known species. It was boring work, meant to fill databases that no one would ever read. But today he had found something strange. "This cannot be right," he muttered to himself. He ran the numbers again and again, but the result was always the same. Humans were wrong. Not weak. Wrong. They did not fit any category. Every species in the galaxy had evolved to be good at one thing. The Korath were strong. The Selthi were fast. The Etherians were wise. But humans were good at everything. Not the best at anything, but capable of everything. Their bodies could adapt to heat and cold. Their minds could learn any skill. Their hearts could pump blood for hours without rest, powered by a chemical called adrenaline that most species did not even produce. And there was something else. Something that made Park Jun's hands shake. Humans were persistence predators. On ancient Earth, before cities and technology, humans had hunted by chasing animals until the animals died from exhaustion. Not from wounds. From running. Humans could not run faster than their prey, but they could run longer. They could run forever. Park Jun leaned back in his chair and thought about what this meant. The galaxy believed humans were weak because they could not win a single fight against a Korath warrior. But what if the fight lasted a day? A week? A month? He began writing a report, knowing that no one would believe him. On the edge of human space, a fleet of Korath warships crossed the border into the new Busan system. There were 30 ships, carrying 15,000 warriors. Their commander, Warlord Keth, stood on his bridge and looked at the small blue planet ahead. "Humans," he said with disgust. "This will not even be a battle. It will be a harvest." His officers laughed. The Korath had conquered 100 species. Humans would be 101. On New Busan, Commander Cho Mira received the alert and felt her stomach drop. She had 3 old destroyers and 800 soldiers. Against 15,000 Korath, she looked at her officers, at their young faces filled with fear, and she made a decision. "Send a message to Earth," she said. "Tell them we will hold. Tell them to send help. And tell them," she paused, her jaw tightening. "Tell them we are not going to run." In the Galactic Council, High Speaker Volas received news of the Korath attack. He considered intervening but decided against it. This was a Tier 7 matter. Beneath the Council's concern, "This is what we are," Park Jun wrote. "We do not win by being stronger. We win by never stopping. Our bodies are designed to keep going when every other creature would quit. Our minds are designed to solve problems, to adapt, to learn. We are not specialists. We are generalists. And that is our greatest strength." Admiral Yoon Hannah read the report 3 times and then called a meeting of Earth's military commanders. "We have been training wrong," she told them. "We have been trying to fight like aliens, using their tactics and their strategies. But we are not aliens. We are human, and we need to fight like humans." She began redesigning the entire military. Instead of building bigger ships, she built faster ones. Instead of training soldiers to win quick battles, she trained them to survive long ones. Instead of copying alien technology, she improved it. The Selthi, species that could control gravity with their minds, had given humanity access to their propulsion systems as part of a trade agreement. Within 6 months, human engineers had made those systems twice as powerful. The Selthi were shocked. It had taken them 1,000 years to develop that technology. Humans had improved it in half a year. "How?" the Selthi ambassador demanded. "How did you do this?" Hannah smiled. "We looked at the problem differently. Your species sees gravity as a force to be controlled. We see it as a tool to be used. We are very good with tools. Word of human innovation spread across the galaxy. Species that had ignored humanity for decades suddenly wanted to talk. Trade offers arrived daily. Alliance proposals filled the diplomatic channels. Everyone wanted to be friends with the strange creatures who had humiliated the Korath. But not everyone was pleased. In a secret meeting of the Council's inner circle, voices argued about what to do with humanity. "They are dangerous," said the representative of the Korath, his voice filled with cold rage. "They must be contained before they grow stronger." "Contained how?" asked General Tova of the Selthi. "We have just seen what happens when you attack them. Do you wish to lose another army? Then we strike now, before they can prepare. Destroy their homeworld. End the threat." Volus raised his hand and silence fell. "We will do nothing of the kind," he said. "Attacking humanity would unite them in ways we cannot predict. It would also prove their point that the Council sees them as a threat. No, we must handle this differently." "Then what do you suggest?" the Korath demanded. Before Volus could answer, an alarm rang through the chamber. Every screen lit up with the same message. A distress call from the outer territories. The Hollow had returned. The Hollow were machines. Artificial intelligences created by a species that had died 1,000,000 years ago. They did not think like living creatures. They did not want power or territory. They wanted only one thing: to harvest biological life for their factories. 12 civilizations had already fallen to them, and now they were moving toward the heart of the galaxy. "We must evacuate the outer territories," General Tova said immediately. "Pull back our forces to defensible positions. Let the Hollow take what they want. They will stop eventually." The Council began to murmur in agreement. It was the logical choice. The safe choice? The choice they had made 100 times before? Then a new voice spoke. "No." Everyone turned to look at the human section, where Kong Tae had risen to his feet. The old diplomat who had been laughed at just weeks ago now stood with fire in his eyes. He said again, louder this time, "We will not run. We will not abandon those worlds to the Hollow. We will fight." Ambassador Ren laughed bitterly. "Fight? With what? Your little army that barely survived one battle?" Kong Tae looked at him without flinching. "With everything we have, and everything we are." He turned to address the entire council. "You have spent 1,000 years running from the Hollow, sacrificing others to save yourselves. And where has it brought you? They are still coming. They will always keep coming, unless someone stops them. And you think humans can succeed where 100 species have failed?" Volus asked quietly. Kong Tae nodded. "We do not know how to stop. It is what we do." The council chamber fell silent, and for the first time in 1,000 years, someone had offered to fight. The human fleet jumped into hollow space on a cold morning in January. 300 ships, carrying 50,000 soldiers, the largest force Earth had ever assembled. Admiral Yoon Hana stood on the bridge of her flagship and watched the stars stretch into lines as they entered faster than light travel. "It's all ships report ready," her first officer announced. "We arrive in enemy territory in 6 hours," Hana nodded. Around her, officers worked at their stations with calm efficiency. They knew what they were flying toward. They knew many of them would not return. And still they went. That was what it meant to be human. The Hollow had been a nightmare for 1,000,000 years. They were not alive, not in any way that mattered. They were machines built to harvest biological life, to break down living creatures into raw materials for factories that built more Hollow. No one knew who had created them or why. All anyone knew was that they never stopped. When the human fleet arrived, the Hollow were waiting. Their ships were black and angular, like broken pieces of darkness floating in space. There were thousands of them, surrounding a massive structure that the humans called the Nexus, the central brain of the Hollow network. Intelligence reports said that destroying the Nexus would cripple the entire swarm. No one had ever gotten close enough to try. "Admiral," an officer said, his voice tight with fear, "enemy ships are moving to intercept." Estimated time to contact for minutes. Hannah looked at the tactical display. The numbers were not good. The Hollow outnumbered them 10-1. Their ships were larger, faster, and more heavily armed. By any logical calculation, the human fleet would be destroyed within hours. All ships, Hannah said into her communicator. This is Admiral Yoon. You know why we are here? You know what we face? The galaxy expects us to die today. Let us show them what dying looks like. The battle began. Human ships moved in patterns the Hollow could not predict. Instead of forming defensive lines, they scattered, attacking from every direction at once. When one ship was damaged, it did not retreat. It charged forward, ramming into enemy vessels and detonating its reactors. The Hollow did not understand. Their calculations said that humans should flee when taking casualties. Instead, the more humans died, the harder the survivors fought. On the Hollow processing world below, Commander Cho Mira led a ground assault. Her team had one mission: get inside the main facility and discover what the Hollow did with the species they captured. The truth was worse than anything they had imagined. "My God," whispered one of her soldiers as they walked through endless corridors filled with glass tubes. Inside each tube floated a body, preserved perfectly. Millions of them, billions. Species the galaxy had thought extinct for centuries. They do not kill them, Mira realized, her voice hollow with horror. They keep them. They harvest them slowly, over thousands of years. These people are still alive. She activated her communicator and broadcast the images across the galaxy. On 100 worlds, beings of every species watched in silence as the truth was revealed. The Hollow were not just destroyers. They were farmers. And every living creature in the galaxy was their crop. "All council species," Mira said, her voice cutting through the static. "This is what waits for you if we fail. This is what your children will become. Choose now whether you will fight or whether you will sleep in these tubes forever." In the space battle above, Lieutenant Lee Day flew his fighter through a storm of enemy fire. He had come a long way from the young ensign who had fought. With a pipe in the streets of New Busan, now he was one of the best pilots in the fleet, and he had been given a special mission. His fighter carried a prototype weapon, a bomb designed to overload the Nexus and shut down the entire Hollow network. The problem was that the bomb had to be delivered by hand. The Nexus had shields that would stop any missile or drone. Only a piloted ship could get through, and once inside, there was no way out. Lee Day had volunteered before anyone else could speak. "Control, this is Day," he said, as he weaved between enemy ships. "I am approaching the Nexus, beginning final run." Lieutenant Hannah's voice came through his speakers. "You do not have to do this. We can find another way." "No, Admiral. There is no other way. And even if there was, this is my choice." He pushed his engines to maximum. The Nexus loomed ahead, a massive sphere of black metal covered in pulsing red lights. It was the heart of the Hollow, the mind that controlled billions of machines across the galaxy. And Lee Day was going to kill it. Enemy fire tore through his ship. Alarms screamed. Smoke filled the cockpit, but he kept flying. His body was broken. His blood was floating in zero gravity around him, but his hands stayed steady on the controls. "For New Busan," he whispered. "For everyone they took." He hit the switch. The bomb detonated inside the Nexus, and for a moment, the entire galaxy seemed to hold its breath. The red lights on the massive sphere flickered once, twice, and then went dark. Across known space, Hollow ships stopped moving. Their weapons fell silent. Their engines died. The network was broken. Lee Day's final transmission reached every ship in the fleet, every broadcast station in the galaxy, for everyone they will never take. Then there was only silence. The battle was not over. Thousands of Hollow ships remained, running on backup systems, fighting with simple programming instead of coordinated intelligence. The human fleet took heavy losses in the hours that followed, but they did not retreat. They did not surrender. They finished what Lee Day had started. When it was finally done, the human fleet had lost 60% of its ships. 20,000 soldiers were dead or missing. Admiral Hannah stood on her damaged bridge, looking at the wreckage of the hollow nexus, and allowed herself to cry. But something else was happening across the galaxy. Species that had hidden from the hollow for centuries were coming out of hiding. Species that had been conquered by the Korath were rising up. The message was spreading, passed from world to world in a wave of hope. If humans can do this, so can we. On 12 Korath-controlled worlds, rebellions erupted on the same day. Slaves who had never dared to fight suddenly remembered that they were more than property. The Korath Empire, which had stood unchallenged for 10,000 years, began to crack. Kongte received news of the victory while standing in the Galactic Council chambers. He had refused to leave, refused to hide, refused to wait in safety while others died. High Speaker Volus approached him slowly, his ancient face unreadable. "You have done what we could not," Volus said quietly. "What we would not." Kongte shook his head. "We did what any species would do. We protected our own," Volus replied. "You protected everyone, even those who called you weak, even those who laughed at you." He paused. "That is something we have never seen before." Kongte looked at the stars through the great window of the council chamber. "Then perhaps," he said, "it is time you started looking." 1 year after the Hollow War, the galaxy was a different place. The great council chamber, which had once echoed with the laughter of those who mocked humanity, now held a new kind of silence. It was the silence of respect, of fear, of something that might have been a Kongte walked to his seat in the inner circle. The highest level of the council, where only the most powerful species sat. No human had ever sat there before. No Tier 7 species had ever even been allowed to speak there. But humanity was no longer Tier 7. The council had created a new classification just for them, Tier 0. Undefined potential. It meant that no one knew what humans were capable of. It meant that everyone was afraid to find out. Kongte settled into his chair and looked around at the faces watching him. The Korath ambassador would not meet his eyes. The Selthi representative nodded with something like warmth. High Speaker Volus simply observed, his silver features as unreadable as always. "The session will begin," Volus announced. First matter, the establishment of the United Defense Pact. This was Admiral Yunhana's creation. After the Hollow War, dozens of species had approached Earth seeking protection. They were the small ones, the weak ones, the species that had been conquered or ignored for centuries. They had seen what humans could do, and they wanted to learn. Hannah had offered them something better than protection. She had offered them partnership. "Pact is simple," Kongte explained to the council. "Any species can join. Any species can leave. But while you are a member, you fight for each other. You protect each other. You are family. And who leads this pact?" Ambassador Wren asked, his voice dripping with contempt. He had recovered some of his old arrogance in the past year. Though everyone noticed, he no longer laughed when humans spoke. "No one leads," Kongte replied. "We decide together. That is the human way." The vote passed easily. 23 species joined the pact on the first day. By the end of the month, that number had doubled. On Earth, Park Jun opened the doors to the Institute for Cross-Species Research. It was the first facility of its kind, bringing together scientists from every corner of the galaxy to work on problems that affected everyone. His first project was simple: helping species live longer. "Humans have short lives," he told his mixed team of researchers. "But we have learned to make every year count. Let us share what we know." Within 6 months, the Institute had developed treatments that extended the lifespan of the short-lived Ven species by 50 years. A year later, they cured a genetic disease that had plagued the Korath for millennia. The Korath did not thank them publicly, but 3 Korath scientists quietly joined the Institute. Park Jun smiled when he heard the news. This was how humanity conquered. Not with weapons, but with kindness. Not with force, but with helping hands. Commander Cho Mira retired from active duty and returned to New Busan. The colony had been rebuilt, bigger and stronger than before. A memorial stood in the central plaza, listing the names of every human who had died in the battle that changed everything. Mira spent her days training young soldiers at the new defense academy. She taught them tactics and strategy, weapons, and warfare. But she also taught them something more important. Being strong does not mean being cruel, she told her students one morning. It means having the power to hurt others and choosing not to. That is real strength. That is what makes us human. Her students came from every colony, every background, every walk of life. Some were children of soldiers. Some were children of farmers. Some had never even seen Earth. But they all learned the same lesson. Fight only when you must. Protect those who cannot protect themselves. And never ever give up. At the entrance to the Galactic Council headquarters, workers installed a new statue. It stood 10 meters tall, made of black marble from the destroyed Hollow Nexus. It showed a young man in a pilot's uniform, his face turned toward the stars, his hand reaching forward as if grasping for something. Just out of reach, Lieutenant Lee Day, the first human to enter the Hall of Guardians. Thousands gathered for the unveiling ceremony. Species that had never set foot on the council station came from across the galaxy to witness the moment. High Speaker Volus himself read the inscription. He flew into darkness so that others might see light. He gave everything so that strangers might live. He was human. Yunhana stood in the crowd, tears running down her face. She had known Lee Day since he was a young ensign, scared and determined in equal measure. She had watched him grow into a hero, and she had heard his final words as he flew to his death. For everyone they will never take. She would carry those words with her for the rest of her life, in a quiet corner of the station. Ambassador Ren requested a private meeting with Kangte. The old Korath seemed smaller somehow, diminished by the weight of a year that had shattered everything he believed. "I have a question," Ren said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I have thought about it every day since New Busan. I do not understand, and I need to understand." "Ask," Kangte said simply. Ren looked at him with eyes that held no more contempt, only confusion. "How? How do you keep fighting when logic says you cannot win? When the numbers are against you? When every calculation says you should surrender? How do you keep going?" Kangte was silent for a long moment. He thought about Earth, about the billions of humans who had struggled and fought and loved across thousands of years. He thought about the soldiers on New Busan, the pilots in the Hollow War, the scientists and diplomats and farmers who had each done their small part to bring humanity to this moment. "Because we never learned how to stop," he finally said. "It is not courage. It is not strength. It is simply who we are. When we fall, we get up. When we fail, we try again. When we die, others continue. It is the only way we know how to live." Ren stared at him for a long time. Then slowly he nodded. "I think I understand," he said quietly. "And I think I am grateful that you are not our enemy." Kangte smiled. "We do not have to be enemies, Ambassador. We never did." Far away in the depths of uncharted space, ancient sensors detected a signal. Something was waking up. Something vast and old and hungry. Another machine intelligence larger than the Hollow, stirring from a sleep of 10 million years. On 100 worlds, alarms began to sound. Council chambers filled with frightened voices. The old pattern of fear started again, the instinct to run, to hide, to sacrifice others for survival. But on Earth, a child looked up at the night sky and pointed at the stars. She asked her father. He picked her up and held her close. "Adventures," he said. "Wonders, challenges we have not even dreamed of yet. Are you scared?" The father thought about the question. He thought about everything humanity had faced and everything that was still to come. "No," he said, "I am not scared. Because whatever is out there, we will face it together. That is what humans do." The child smiled and continued watching the stars. Somewhere in the galaxy, fear was spreading, but on Earth, hope was shining brighter than ever, and the galaxy would never forget what humanity had taught them. That strength was not in the body. That courage was not in the sword. That the smallest species, the weakest creatures, the ones everyone had dismissed and ignored, could change everything. All they had to do was refuse to stop.